Winnipeg's had its fair share of crime stories, but one crime didn't just make local headlines, it exploded across Canada. It shocked people from coast to coast, changed laws, and honestly, it still feels unreal even today. We're talking about the murder of Tim McLean in 2008, the Greyhound bus killing. It was July 30th, 2008. Tim McLean, a 22-year-old carnival worker, was heading home to Winnipeg after a job in Edmonton. He hopped on Greyhound bus 1170, sat near the back, popped his headphones in, and relaxed. It was just another long, boring ride across the prairies. Nothing unusual until another passenger got on the bus at a stop in Erickson, Manitoba. A man named Vince Lee. Vince Lee, 40 years old at the time, seemed like just another guy. Nobody thought twice when he sat near the front at first, but then he moved. Quietly, he walked to the back of the bus and sat down right next to Tim, even though there were tons of empty seats. Passengers later said Tim barely even noticed. He was dozing off against the window, and then, out of nowhere, it happened. Without warning, Vince Lee pulled out a large hunting knife and started stabbing Tim McLean repeatedly. At first, people thought it was a fight, some thought it was a prank, but very quickly, the horror became clear. Passengers screamed and the bus driver pulled over onto the side of the Trans-Canada Highway near Portage-la Prairie. Everyone bolted out of the bus, except for Lee and Tim. What happened next was worse. Lee didn't stop. He decapitated Tim McLean inside the bus while horrified passengers and even the driver watched through the windows. He then mutilated Tim's body and walked around the bus showing parts of it off. Police were called immediately. By the time they arrived, Lee was pacing inside the bus, still holding the knife in parts of Tim's body. Police surrounded the bus. They tried talking to Lee, but he wasn't responding normally. They couldn't just storm the bus. He was armed, dangerous, and clearly not mentally stable. The standoff lasted hours. Finally, around 1:30 a.m., Lee broke a window and tried to escape. Police tasered him, tackled him, and arrested him on the spot. Canada was in shock. News of the attack spread fast. People couldn't believe it. This wasn't just some gang shooting or robbery gone wrong. This was a random, brutal, completely senseless act of violence. It felt like something out of a horror movie, and it left the whole country asking, how could this happen? Vince Lee was charged with second-degree murder, but it wasn't a normal trial. Psychiatrists examined him and determined he was suffering from severe, untreated schizophrenia. At the time of the attack, Lee believed that Tim McLean was a demon trying to kill him. In March 2009, a judge found Lee not criminally responsible due to mental illness. Instead of prison, he was sent to a high-security psychiatric hospital in Selkirk, Manitoba. The decision sparked outrage. People felt it was a slap in the face to Tim's family. There were protests, petitions, calls to change the law around mentally ill criminals. One of the biggest changes that came out of this was the introduction of Tim's Law, a push for tougher restrictions on people found not criminally responsible. In 2014, the Canadian government passed the Not Criminally Responsible Reform Act, making it harder for those found NCR, not criminally responsible, to get out if they committed especially violent crimes. You're probably wondering, what happened to Vince Lee? After years of treatment, he legally changed his name to Will Baker, and in 2017, he was granted absolute discharge, meaning he lives freely, with no monitoring, no conditions, and no criminal record. He's supposedly taking his medication and living somewhere in Canada. But because of privacy laws, the public doesn't know exactly where. Tim's family, especially his mother, Carol Dedeli, has never stopped fighting. She spent years advocating for victims' rights, speaking out about the flaws in the mental health and justice systems. For her, and for a lot of Canadians, the fact that Lee walks free today is one of the hardest things to accept. This wasn't just a tragedy for Winnipeg, it was a national trauma. One young man lost his life in the most brutal, random way imaginable, and it forced Canada to take a hard look at how it handles mental illness, crime, and justice. To this day, whenever people talk about the darkest crimes in Canadian history, the Greyhound bus killing is always near the top of the list, a reminder that sometimes true horror doesn't happen in the shadows. It happens in broad daylight on an ordinary day when you least expect it.